Hi guys. I hope everything is going well. This is going to be here week 3, first lesson of the week, which would be on Tuesday. We are going to start with lesson 2, where we left off in Red Scarf Girl. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the excerpt from beginning to end, and then we will go into the lesson that we need to actually do in Amplify. Okay, so we can preview all of this. This is Schoology. This is the list of everything that we need to do for this lesson. And you can see all of the tabs are listed with the cards on each tab. Your homework is going to be your exit ticket and solo, but that's going to be included in this video, okay, as always. All right, in your Amplify curriculum, your objective is we're not going to act out the scene, but you're going to examine how the writer uses details to reveal emotion. We're expressly going to talk about if Ji Lee feels hopeless or hopeful, more hopeful or more hopeless in a specific time period where we're going to, little piece that we're going to read. And then compare and contrast 2 different scenes, okay? And we're going to select those details from each of those scenes or those passages to discuss our understanding of that the Ji Lee's emotions at that point. All right. We're also going to look at 2 different perspectives. We have a perspective of Ji Lee in this reading, and then we have also her mom and dad's perspective as well, because this is where she comes home to tell them about her being picked to audition. All right, so I am going to start out with, obviously we're going to start out with tab 4, which is the dialogue. But before we do all of that, I am going to go ahead and read to you the portion of reading from beginning to end that you need to know, the Liberation Army Dancer portion. If you want to, you can read along with me. In the book, it's pages 45 through 47. And this is where, right after she smiles at Wang Chi, the next part of this is her coming home and telling everyone. Okay, so we're on page 45, the top, line 16, or paragraph 16, rather. Mom, Dad, Grandma! I panted up the steep, dark stairs in too much of a hurry to turn on the light and tripped over some pots stored on the steps. I couldn't wait to tell them my news. I knew they would all be as excited as I was. Our apartment was bright and warm and welcoming. Burgundy curtains shut the darkness outside and made the one big room even cozier. In front of the tall French window, our square mahogany table was covered with steaming dishes and surrounded by my family, who were laughing and chattering when I rushed in. They all looked up expectantly. Everybody, guess what? Today, a Liberation Army woman came to school, and she tested me, and she wants me to audition for the Central Liberation Army Arts Academy. Just think, I could be in the Liberation Army, and I could be a performer too. Isn't it great? I picked up our cat, Little White, and gave her a big kiss. It's lucky I studied martial arts for so long. When the Liberation Army woman saw my backbend, she just loved it. I twirled around on my toes and snapped my heels together in a salute. Comrade Grandma, Zhang Ji Li reporting. My younger brother, Ji Yong, jumped up from the table and saluted me. My little sister, Ji Yun, started to twirl around as I had done, but she slipped and fell. We jumped to the floor with her and rolled around together. Ji Li, I heard my father call. I looked up. Mom and Dad and Grandpa were looking at each other solemnly. It might be better not to do the audition, Dad spoke slowly, but his tone was serious, very serious. What? Don't do the audition, Ji Lee. He looked straight at me this time and sounding much more forceful. Don't do the audition? Why not? Dad shook his head. I grabbed Mom's arm. Mom, why not? She squeezed my hand and looked at me worriedly. Your father means that the recruitment requirements are very strict. Wow, You really scare me, Dad, I laughed with relief. I know that. Principal Long told us it would be very competitive. I know it's just an audition, but who knows? I might be lucky, right? I picked up a steamed bun and took a bite. I'm not just talking about talent, Dad said. There are more important requirements, political considerations. Oh, Dad, that's no problem. I took another big bite of the bun. I was an outstanding student, an excellent young pioneer, and even the Daoji Zhang, the student chairman of the whole school. What more could they want? My mouth was full, so I stretched out my arm to show Dad my Daoji Zhang badge, a plastic tag with 3 red stripes. I saw a pain in Dad's eyes that I'd never seen before. The problem isn't with you yourself, Shili. What I mean is that the political background investigations of these academies are very severe. Political background investigations? What's that? That's an investigation into the class status of your ancestors and all members of your family. He leaned back in his chair, and the lampshade put his face in the shadow. Jili, the fact is that our family will not be able to pass these investigations, he said slowly, and you will not be allowed to be a member of a Liberation Army performing troupe. For a long time, I did not speak. Why? I whispered at last. He started to say something but stopped. He leaned forward again, and I could see the sorrow on his face. It's very complicated, and you wouldn't understand it now, even if I told you. Maybe we should wait until you're grown up. The point is that I don't think you'll be admitted, so just drop it, all right? I did not say anything. Putting down the half-eaten bun, I walked to the mirror on the big wardrobe that divided the room and pressed my forehead against its cool surface. I could not hold back any longer. I burst out crying. I want to do it. I want to try. What will I tell Principal Long and my classmates? I wailed. Maybe we should let her try. She probably won't be chosen anyway. Grandma looked at Dad. Dad stood up, heaving a deep sigh. This is for her own good. Her classmates and teachers will just be surprised if she says that her father won't let her go. But what if she passes the audition and can't pass the political background investigation? Then everybody will know that the family has a political problem. Dad's voice grew louder and louder as he went on. Ji-young and Ji-yoon were looking up at Dad, wide-eyed. I bit my lip to force myself to stop crying and went to bed without saying another word. Very interesting. So we kind of know that there's some issues here politically. We don't know much more. We did kind of look at the intro to the Cultural Revolution in China. And we don't know a lot about that yet. We're going to learn as we go through this memoir what is going on. But we're going to go to tab 4, work out loud. Okay. And I'm sorry, we're going to go to tab 5 because there's nothing on tab 4 except the reading, which I read to you. And we're going to go to tab 5. And we're going to talk about what hopeful and hopeless means real quick. I know that most of you know, full of hope, thinking things are going to work out, and not full of hope, thinking things that are really bad that are going to happen. So most of you know what hopeful versus hopeful means. Okay. So in order for us to be able to do this poll, you would probably need to really think about how hopeful do you think Ji Li is at this moment in the scene? Okay. Completely hopeful, mostly hopeful, nearly hopeless, hopeless. Okay. This is the scene right here that we are speaking of. Not all the way through, but just this scene where she comes home and she's excited. It's Lucky, my brother, and they were rolling around on the floor. This is before the parents responded. Okay. So is she at that moment when she tells them about being chosen to try out, completely hopeful, mostly hopeful, somewhat hopeful, nearly hopeless, or hopeless? And then give me a quote from the passage to support your answer. Go back in and look to see what she has said in this passage, this part of the passage. Where can you find something that would give you support for what you answered up top? Okay. Now we're going to go to tab 6. In tab 6, we're going to select 2 phrases that show how Geely's mother, father, and grandmother are feeling after Geely shares her news with them. 2 phrases. They have to be underlined, A, B, C, and D. I heard Dad call. Looking at each other solemnly, Mom, Dad, and Grandma. It might not be better not to do the audition. His tone was serious, very serious. How are they feeling? So you're going to look for something that kind of gives you an idea that they're feeling a certain way. Obviously, if they look at each other solemnly, tones are a big deal when it comes to feelings as well. All right, so now we're going to go to card 2. And in card 2, in paragraph 31, Geely writes, I saw a pain in Dad's eyes that I had never seen before. Why does Geely's dad have a look of pain in his eyes? So think about this. They all seem to be a very loving and supportive family. Why is there pain in her father's eyes? Please use race. Father's eyes, because. Why is there pain in his eyes? Okay, and then give me your some evidence to back that up. Once you're done with that, hand that in. Okay, this next part is going to be your exit ticket, which is tab 9. Geely's point of view changes over the course of her conversation with her family. Indicate whether each quote shows Geely feeling hopeful, Geely feeling hopeless, or Geely's family feeling worried. Okay. Wow, you really scared me, Dad. I laughed with relief. Is Geely feeling hopeful, hopeless, or feeling worried? So you're just going to pick one of these. Okay. All right. Second one, I was an outstanding student, an excellent young pioneer, and even the Dao Zhang, the student chairman of the whole school. Geely hopeful, Geely hopeless, or Geely's family feeling worried. I could not hold back any longer. I burst out crying. Geely feeling hopeful, Geely feeling hopeless, or her family feeling worried. And the last one, but what if she passes the audition and can't pass the political background investigation? Then everybody will know that the family had a political problem. That's her father talking. Is it Geely feeling hopeful, Geely feeling hopeless, or Geely feeling worried? Again, when you read these quotes, okay, you have to indicate whether each quote shows the Geely's hopeful, Geely's hopeless, or Geely's family feels worried. Then explain how Geely's perspective is different from her family's perspective in about the audition. Okay. What does she want to do versus what do they want her to do and why? Okay. Okay, so here's your sentence. Geely wants to do the audition while her family does not. Now you're going to tell why and give examples and explain, and then hand that in. Now that's your exit ticket. At this point, we are going to go into your solo. In your solo, this is going to be your homework. Okay, we're going to read the passage, and then I will read the questions, but this will be your homework. All right, so let me look to see. This is going to be from where we left off. And it's going to be, if you want to follow along in the book, it's going to be from where we left off on page 47. And then it will go all the way to, and I just have to look to see, I'm not really quite sure. All the way to 51. Okay? So 47 to 51. All right, so let me read that for you. The hallway outside the principal's office was very quiet. It was noon, and nearly everyone was home for lunch. The big red characters, principal's office, made me nervous. I put my hand on the knob, hesitated, and lowered it. I walked back to the stairs trembling and covered with sweat. I rehearsed the words I was going to say one more time, then I rushed back to the office door and pushed it open. Principal Long was reading a newspaper. She raised her head and peered through her glasses to see who had interrupted her. Principal Long, here's a note from my father. Hastily, I gave her the note, damp with sweat from my palm. I hurried out of the office before she could look at it or ask me any questions. I ran down the hallway, colliding with someone and running blindly on, thinking only that she must be very disappointed. At 1 o'clock, when the bell finally rang to start class, I heaved a long sigh and walked out of the library. My best friend, An Yi, and our homeroom teacher were standing outside the main building. As soon as they saw me, An Yi shouted, "Where have you been? Aren't you supposed to go to the audition at 1? Hurry up, you're going to be late." I opened my mouth, but couldn't say a word. What's wrong?" Teacher Gu asked. I'm not going." I bowed my head and twisted my fingers in my red scarf. "What? Are you crazy? This is the chance of a lifetime." I did not raise my head. I didn't want to see An Yi's face. "Really? Why not?" Teacher Gu sounded concerned. I tried hard not to cry. Father wouldn't let me. An Yi was about to say something, but Teacher Gu cut her off. "All right, this is her family's decision. We won't talk about it further." She put her hand on my shoulder and gave me a little squeeze. Then she went away with An Yi without another word. Across the yard, I saw Principal Long, Wang Chi, and the two boys coming out of the gym. I dodged behind a tree and heard them chatting and laughing as they went by. They were going to the audition. I could have been going with them, my eyes blurred with tears. I thought of the way Teacher Gu had looked at me. There had been a mixture of disappointment, doubt, and inquiry in her eyes. I was sure that Principal Long must have looked the same way after she read Dad's note. So must Wang Chi, Yu Chao Fan, and all my classmates. I didn't want to think any longer. I just wished that I could find a place to hide so I wouldn't have to see their faces. Until that spring, I believed that my life and my family were nearly perfect. My father was a stage actor, 6 feet tall and slightly stoop-shouldered. Because of his height and his serious face, he usually played the villain at the children's theater where he worked. He was the vicious landlord, the foolish king, but at home he was our humorous, kind, and wise dad. He loved reading, and he loved including the whole family in his discoveries. He demonstrated the exercises of the great acting teacher, Stanislavski. He imitated Charlie Chaplin's funny walk, and when he was reading about calculus, he explained Zeno's paradox and the infinite series. We thought Dad knew everything. Mom had been an actress when she met Dad, and she was still as pretty as an actress. When I was little, she stopped acting and worked in a sports equipment store. Every evening, we eagerly waited for her to come home from work. We rushed out to greet her and opened her handbag where there was sure to be a treat for us. Mom spoiled us, Grandma said. Grandma was truly amazing. She had graduated from a modern-style high school in 1914, a time when very few girls went to school at all. After liberation, she had helped to found Jing-Er Primary School, my school, and become its vice principal. She retired from teaching when I was born so that she could take care of me while Mom worked. But whenever we met her old students, now adults, they still bowed respectfully and called her Teacher Cow, which made me so proud. Ji Yong was 11, 1 year younger than me, and Ji Yoon was 1 year younger than Ji Yong. Once Mom told me that she had her 3 children in 3 years because she wanted to finish the duty of having babies sooner, so she could devote herself wholeheartedly to the revolution. While I was tall and thin like Dad, Ji Yong and Ji Yoon were shorter and plumper like Mom. Ji Yong was nicknamed Iron Ball because he was dark-skinned and sturdy. He liked to play in the alley and paid little attention to his studies. Ji Yoon had 2 dimples, which gave her an especially sweet smile. She was easygoing and did not always strive to be the best as I did, but I had learned that she could be very stubborn. And then there was Song Popo. She had originally been our nanny. When we grew up, she stayed and became our housekeeper. As long as I could remember, she had been living in the small room downstairs. She had raised the three of us, and we all felt she was like another grandmother. She was as dear to us as we were to her. We lived in a big building in one of Shanghai's nicer neighborhoods. My fourth aunt, who had been married to Dad's half brother, lived downstairs with her daughter, my cousin Yumi. And Yumi's daughter, a lovely baby called Hao Hao. My uncle had died in Hong Kong a few years before. Yumi's husband had a job in another city and was allowed to visit Shanghai only twice a year. Song Popo told us our extended family used to occupy two whole buildings, 10 rooms altogether. Then they all moved away, and only your family and your fourth aunt's family were left. Your family only has one room now. It's just too bad. She shook her head sadly. But I didn't feel that way at all. I loved our top floor room. A huge French window and a high ceiling made it bright all year round, warmer during the winter and cooler in the summer. The kitchen on the landing outside, the room was small, but I didn't mind. Our room was 10 times as big as many of my classmates' homes and 100 times brighter. Best of all, we had a private bathroom, a full-size room with a sink, a toilet, and a tub. It was almost as large as some families' entire homes. Many didn't have a bathroom at all, or even a flush toilet, and very few had a full-size bathroom that they did not have to share with other families. My family was also special in another way. Sometimes on Saturday evenings, some of Dad's colleagues would visit. They called these gatherings Zhang's Salon. I did not know what the salon thing meant, but I loved them. They were wonderful parties. Mom would make her famous beet soup, and Grandma would make her steamed buns. We children would help Song Popo polish the mahogany table and Grandma's four prized red and gold dowry trunks until we could see our reflections in the wood and leather. When the guests arrived, we would greet them as uncle and aunt, as a sign of respect and bring tea to each of them. Most of them were actors from Dad's theater, and they were all talented. There was Uncle Zhu, a young actor who had excellent handwriting. Every time he came, he would take some time to help me with my calligraphy. There was Uncle Tan and Aunt Wu, so young and handsome and well dressed that the neighbors noticed every time they rode up to our building on their new bicycles and called them the beautiful couple. There was Uncle Fan, who had been Dad's friend since college. When he arrived, the discussions immediately became more interesting. His enthusiasm about whatever movie or play he had seen recently was contagious, and there was Uncle Bao, a playwright, who smoked cigars and let me sit on his lap. Although he spoke less than the others, his comments were always worth waiting for. Conversation flowed, so fascinating that we did not want to go to bed no matter how late they stayed. Until the audition, I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. An Yi said that I seemed to have changed into a different person. Between classes, I would avoid my classmates. After school, I would stay in the library until it closed, just to elude the family's over-concerned looks. One time, our cat, Little White, cut her leg deeply on a piece of glass. We all rushed to find bandages to bind up the wound. But Little White ran into the attic and hid there for days, licking her wounds by herself. Just like Little White, I wanted to be left alone. None of the other three students passed the audition, but this didn't make me feel better. It had not been just an audition for me. I was afraid that the rest of my life would not be what I had imagined. I had had many beautiful dreams. I dreamed of being a doctor in a white coat with a stethoscope hanging from my neck, saving lives one after another. I dreamed of being an architect, designing the most beautiful bridges in the world. I dreamed of being an actress, holding bunches of flowers, bowing again and again to answer curtain calls. Until now, I had never doubted that I could achieve anything that I wanted. The future had been full of infinite possibilities. Now, I was no longer sure that was still true. One afternoon, a week after the audition, I came home from school and saw a boy blowing big, splendid soap bubbles that shimmered with colors in the light. One by one, they drifted away and burst. In a few seconds, they were all gone. I thought about my beautiful dreams and wondered if they would drift away just like those lovely soap bubbles. Okay, card 3. Your question. Select 3 words or phrases that both show how nervous Julie feels when she gives Principal Long the letter. The big red characters, Principal's office, made me nervous. I put my hand on the knob, hesitated, and lowered it. I walked back, to the stairs, trembling and covered with sweat. 3 words or phrases. So, when you tremble, when you sweat, when you hesitate, all of those things have to do with how nervous you are. Go next. Ji Lee writes that she didn't want to see Anyi's face when she saw Teacher Gu and Anyi outside the main building. Why didn't she? Anyi had bullied her in the past, so she was afraid of her. Ji Lee was upset that she wasn't allowed to audition and couldn't face her friend. Teacher Gu was disappointed that Ji Lee wasn't allowed to audition, so she told Ji Lee not to look at Anyi. Ji Lee was embarrassed that she had made Anyi late for the audition. Click the correct one and click next. Part 5. Number 3, compare and contrast how Ji Lee seems to be feeling with how Teacher Gu seems to be feeling. Okay, so Ji Lee is feeling, and then you're going to go into that, whereas Teacher Gu seems to feel, okay, so Ji Lee is feeling embarrassed. Ji Lee is feeling very upset and frustrated and embarrassed about not being able to do the audition. I think Teacher Gu is more along the lines that she's concerned. If you go back and look at the actual piece where she tells her, you will see the description. Use that as your example, or and then try and explain it. Okay, there's your number 3. We're going to go to card 6. This will be question 4. What was the reason Ji Lee's mom gave for having Ji Lee, Ji Young, and Ji Yoon all within the span of 3 years? A. Ji Lee's mom was concerned that Song Popo was going to leave after 3 years and she wouldn't have that help. B. Ji Lee's mom wanted to finish having babies so she could get back to supporting the revolution. C. Ji Lee's mom had been an actress and wanted to get back to the stage as quickly as possible. D. Ji Lee's mom would have spread out having babies, but Ji Lee's grandmother was against it. Okay, if you go down, let's go to Ji Lee was young, 1 year younger than me. Ji Yoon was 1 year younger, and Ji Young. Once mom told me that she had had her 3 children in 3 years because she wanted to finish the duty of having babies sooner so she could devote herself wholeheartedly to the revolution. Okay, so choose the correct answer there and then click next. On card 7, we are on number 5. Which idea about Ji Lee's family is suggested by the passage? Ji Lee's parents were able to give Ji Lee only what she needed, but nothing more. B. Ji Lee's family treated their nanny well until she became their housekeeper. C. Ji Lee's family was always silly in their attempts to have fun. Or D. Ji Lee had a loving and supportive family. Okay, click the one that you think is correct, and then click next. 6. On some Saturday evenings, Ji Lee's father colleagues used to visit. Why did Ji Lee enjoy these parties? A. The guests were interesting and talented. B. Ji Lee's mother would often buy her gifts to open before the parties or during the parties. C. Ji Lee could boast about her parents having great friends. D. The guests dressed up and put on plays for the children. Then click next. Last question, which statement is true? Ji Lee liked to play with soap bubbles. B. Ji Lee felt better than that none of the other students had passed the audition. C. Ji Lee was afraid her dreams would never come true. D. Ji Lee was very upset because she didn't pass the audition. Okay, so when you're finished with that, hand that in. That is the end of this lesson, the first lesson of the week of September 28th for Advanced English. And if there, as always, if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to email me on Schoology. Do not hesitate to hit me up on Talking Points or log on to extra help hours that are listed. So I hope everyone is well, and I will see you soon.